India remains deeply concerned about the safety and security of Indian nationals in Canada, especially after the violent disruption outside consular camp in Brampton, Ontario on Sunday. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi said such acts of violence will never weaken India's resolve, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar too expressed concern, saying it was unacceptable that Indian diplomats had been placed under surveillance by Canada.
What happened at the Hindu temple in Canada was obviously deeply concerning. You would have seen the statement first by our official spokesperson and also the expression of concern by our Prime Minister yesterday. That should, I think, convey to you how deeply we feel about it. Canada has developed a pattern of making allegations without providing specifics. Secondly, when we look at Canada, for us, the fact that they're putting our diplomats under surveillance is something which is unacceptable.
Earlier on Monday, the Ministry of External Affairs said India condemns the acts of violence perpetrated by extremists and separatists with an expectation that those indulging in violence will be prosecuted. And DD India correspondent Meghna Dev is joining us live to give us more inputs on what's happening in this particular incident. Hi Meghna, we all know what happened outside Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton. Prime Minister Narendra Modi strongly condemned the violence and said such actions will never weaken India's resolve. And now External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar too expressed concern, saying it was unacceptable that Indian diplomats had been placed under surveillance by Canada. Now, Meghna, can you provide more details about the nature of this surveillance and how the Indian government plans to address this issue diplomatically?
So, when we're actually talking about the issue that was raised by India in terms of surveillance that was carried out by the Canadian government on the officials of the consulate, on their communication as well, I have a statement of the Ministry of External Affairs where they have said that some of the consular officials were recently informed by the Canadian government that they have been and continue to be under audio and video surveillance. Their communications have also been intercepted. Now, we have also formally protested to the Canadian government as we deem these actions to be flagrant violation of relevant diplomatic and consular conventions. Now, this has been, and when we actually see that already our diplomats and the officials of the consulate are already functioning under extreme circumstances, under violent circumstances, in not a good environment, if we can say. And besides that, when these kind of surveillance is being carried out by the Canadian government, audio and video surveillance is being put in, that is definitely flagrant violation of diplomatic and consular conventions. Now, having said that, a number of issues have been raised by the Indian side time and again to the Canadian authorities that our officials, diplomats, higher officials of the High Commission and consulate are not safe. But then also there was no step that was taken by the Canadian authorities. So this actually shows that how careless or probably how the Canadian authorities are ignoring this serious matter. Having said that, now when we are talking about the violence that happened at the consular camp in Brampton, at the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton, we definitely do see that now 3 arrests have been made. The 3 people will be produced in the Ontario High Court. But this actually paints a picture that after a lot of pressure was put in on the Canadian authorities, they have come up with 3 arrests. So, were the Canadian authorities not actually taking stronger action, when the violence erupted? Besides that, also today, the Indian diaspora is carrying out protests against these anti-India elements, against the Canadian authorities, and obviously the people who did the violence at this religious place, at the Hindu Sabha temple. So the Indian diaspora has come together to protest at the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton, as well as in Surrey at the Lakshmi Narayan temple, and in more places also it is expected. that the Indian diaspora will show their strong protest, will lodge a very strong protest in, against the anti-India elements and against the people who are doing violence at such religious places.
Definitely, Meghna. But what, apart from the fact that diaspora will be protesting today, in wake of what happened outside the Hindu Sabha temple, what actions are being taken by the Canadian authorities in this regard?
So the Canadian authorities, as I told you, Siddharth, first they have arrested 3 people. That's what we said. But we will have to see what kind of court proceedings follow after that. Will there any stricter measures be taken by the Canadian authorities on these 3 people who were part of the violence that happened at Brampton? Or more people will more people will be arrested in this regard is also a question. Will stricter action be taken will also be a question, because time and again, when our diplomats were threatened, when posters of our diplomat, giving them death threats, all of that had emerged, there was no strong action that was taken by the Canadian authorities, and it was passed away just by saying that it is freedom of speech or freedom of protest. So while this has happened and this has been the behavioral pattern of the Canadian authorities and the Canadian government, we will have to see if any stricter action is taken apart from the arrest. What we will definitely have to see is that now when Prime Minister Narendra Modi has posted on X about this, he has also said that he expects that the Canadian authorities take some action. But obviously he has also said that this will not deter the resolve and spirit of the diaspora or the consulate officials. Very importantly, another aspect is that time and again, Canadian authorities, the behavioral pattern of Canadian authorities and the Canadian government, the Trudeau government, has been supporting people who run anti-India agenda, supporting people who are anti-India elements, who do anti-India activities. So time and again this has happened. Now there were false, baseless references also made to Union Home Minister Amit Shah in a committee. So what we do definitely see, and time and again, false insinuations and concocted stories are given to the international media to smear India's image, to malign India's image on international platforms. So this has been a very conscious strategy of the Trudeau government to malign India's image. But we definitely see that whenever India gives out an information that this is the person who we want, extradition requests are sent, or this is the person who is carrying out India activities on your soil, their citizenship is fast-tracked, or the extradition request, no heed is paid to that. So time and again, this has happened, and that may be one of the reasons that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had to post about it, because the lethargy or probably the kind of inactivity that the Canadian government is showing in
lackadaisical attitude.
And now it is not only that; it is also about the concern for the safety of Indian nationals, the Indian diaspora in Canada.
All right, we leave it there. Thank you so much, Meghna, for your inputs.